Okay, welcome back. We're going to have a look at data visualization. Data visualization is a great way to look at data and pull out patterns visually that you can then explore further into the numbers and use the amazing evolutionary power of your brain to actually pick out visual patterns. I mean, we're designers, visual is good. So, let's go through the very basics. If I wanted to plot a graph of the average temperature, I basically just select my data set. I go to the Insert tab, and then you'll see I've got a number of recommended graphs up here and a whole bunch of different types. Recommended graphs is good just to have an explore through what your data looks like, and you can see quite quickly what happens. And you can see if you can see any patterns. Sometimes you might already know what you want to do. So you can go to all charts and you can actually just explore through this to get your best kind of charts. This same sort of thing is available by going directly to these drop down boxes and going over. Now, depending what sort of graphs you're doing and what you're looking for, you might want different types of charts. For example, anything sciencey, you should probably put the data points on with the markers. You can change the shape and color later. If you're just looking for patterns, you can go just a straight line. So let's pick that for the moment. But there's a whole bunch. Watch out for graphs that don't actually tell you much, like the 3D alternatives and stacked line graphs, which can really mess up your data visually unless you know what they do. So anyway, let's pick a line graph for the moment. Now we have our chart, we can move it around. Be careful not to click in, because then you can drag things like the chart title around by accident and mess up your chart. But you can undo those things. Now you'll see here, we've got our temperatures down the side, and we have a whole bunch of numbers along the bottom. Now I actually want the days, or my quarters of days, to be displayed along the bottom. So how do we do that? Okay, so the first thing to do is in the Chart Tools Design tab, you want to go to Select Data. Now you'll see here we've got Series 1. We can edit that and go and give it a series name. In this case, I'm going to click on Average. Now we have the average data, so it's correctly labeled. And over here, our horizontal axis, if we click Edit on that, it asks us for an axis label range. Now this must be the same as the amount of data you have. And I'm just going to go and I'm going to select my range of days like this and hit OK. And now we can see that the graph is nicely labeled. Now if I want to spruce this up a little bit more, I might do something like add some chart elements like titles. Charts need titles all the time. Go down here, we're going to go temperature. Sure. Always provide units, Celsius, and then down the bottom we're going to type in day. Cool, so now I have that graph. Now what we might want to do is actually expand it out, and we might want to do things like if we go to the side and we look at the format, which you can access through format, or by clicking on the chart design and these buttons down here, we can then change different options such as the horizontal scale and stuff. But we'll leave that for the moment. But we can see here we've got some interesting data. Now let's plot another graph looking at some different data. Let's look at the standard deviation. Now I'm just going to plot this really quickly. So I'm going to go again, insert, give me a line graph, boom, there. Now we can see between these two graphs that that is wildly different. I'm just like, oh, okay, so something's happening here, which we can see here on this graph is kind of happening, but this shows us a lot more information. So I'm going to replot this graph. I'm going to delete it, but this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this whole range here, and then I'm going to grab standard deviation, and I might also grab the range just to see what happens. And now when I go up to insert, by the way, I did that by holding down Control as I dragged down, and that added it to the group. Now when I hit this, I get a multi-plot line, which is great. And if I hit plot, we can now see from this that we have our standard deviation, which isn't labeled, so we should label that up. So let's go into select data. So the first one, which you can see, is our average. We go series name, average, great. This one, what's that one going to? That one, edit. So we'll put that as our, if we want to see what data it actually is, that's in the R column. R column is our range. Click on that, fantastic. And then this one here, this will be our standard deviation. And now all of a sudden our columns are labeled. While we're here, we may as well just select our days to put the correct units in. And just like that, we now have a labeled graph. And we can see some interesting data inferences from here. We can see the range spikes, which is interesting because the average is keeping fairly low here. And we can also see from this graph the day-night cycle of temperatures within the beehive. So instantly we've created quite an interesting graph that we can then use to explain some of our data. Okay, next video we'll look at some more interesting graphs and some of the tricks and tips we can use with our data and our graphs to show other things and point out the stuff we want to point out. Cool, thanks for listening.